Well, for more on this, Shahram Akbarzadeh joins me now from Melbourne. He's a professor of Middle East and Central Asian politics at Deakin University in Australia. Now, there have been suggestions that Israel's steps towards normalising relations with Saudi Arabia were part of what prompted Hamas's vicious attacks on October 7th. Do you agree with that?
Thanks for having me, Charlotte. Yes, absolutely. I think there's a combination of factors. One is that the Palestinian case was being sidelined in talks between Israel and many Arab states. Saudi Arabia was exploring and, in fact, sending significant signals that it is moving towards normalization. UAE, Bahrain had already moved on. So the Palestinian question was being sidelined, and what Hamas did, tragically and shockingly, really put the Palestinian question back on the agenda, on the international agenda, on the agenda in the streets of Arab world, and now something that no Arab leader can really ignore. I also need to add that this was an act of desperation over many years of Israeli occupation and many restrictions placed on Palestinian people in the West Bank as well as in Gaza. Of course, Gaza has been blockaded for 17 odd years.
And Egypt, of course, plays a key role there in terms of getting aid in and round that blockade and foreign nationals out through the Rafah crossing in the last few days. But equally, they don't want to take in large number of refugees, and they're in a tricky situation domestically. I was wondering if you could explain more about some of the conflicts at the heart of what Egypt is kind of going through right now.
Well, of course, Egypt is in a very tricky situation. President Sisi is very adamant that it does not want to, in fact, is very adamant about its policies against Hamas. They have destroyed Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. They have targeted Muslim Brotherhood. They see a natural affinity between Hamas and Muslim Brotherhood. So they have no desire to let Hamas take hold or even enter Egyptian territory. And the fear is that if they open their borders and allow Palestinian refugees to cross the border and come into Egypt, then a lot of Hamas fighters and followers will also come in. So the Palestinian issue will become an Egyptian problem. So that's one of the big problems that they're facing. But by the same token, there is significant public opinion support in the streets of Egypt, across the Arab world, and desire for Arab states to really act in support and defense of Palestinian lives.
And just before we joined you, we were talking about the European response. What's the feeling among Arab nations about how Western leaders are behaving in all of this?
The feeling is that the West has lost all its credibility, that the United States and its NATO allies, except Turkey, have lost all moral standing when they talk about support for human lives, when they talk about support and upholding international law, when they galvanize it, they try to mobilize support for Ukraine that was facing Russian invasion. So all of those standards seem to apply to US allies and US friends and doesn't really apply to Palestinians. So there is a wide degree of disillusionment and disappointment with the West in the Arab world.
Shahram Akbarzadeh with that analysis. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.